I recognized my wife's shadow in my son's new interactive virtual reality game. It was a Tuesday, the kind of bland, unremarkable Tuesday that usually just dissolves into the background noise of life. But this one fractured everything. Liam, my son, all of 10 years old, and practically living in the hyper-realistic world of Nexus echoes, was glued to his VR rig in the den. Usually, it was me yelling at him to get off the damn thing, but today, I was just drained. The office had been a dumpster fire, and the drive home through rush hour traffic had felt like navigating a war zone. So I just slumped onto the sofa, remote in hand, trying to find something, anything that didn't require a lot of brain power. Liam, though, he was practically vibrating with excitement, his voice, usually a low hum of gamer speak, now sharp and clear. "Dad, you gotta see this! They added a new zone, and it's insane!" I just grunted, but he was already pulling at my arm. "No, seriously, Dad, it's so real. They call it the Whispering Grove." Now, I'm not a gamer, never have been. My idea of cutting-edge tech is a smartphone that doesn't lag. But Liam's passion, it's infectious. And honestly, anything to pull him out of his own head for a bit, to see him genuinely animated about something other than complaining about homework, I'll take it. So I peeled myself off the couch, and the sheer weight of the headset felt alien on my head. The moment the lenses flickered to life, it was like stepping into another dimension, a world rendered with such detail it made my eyes ache. The air, simulated of course, felt crisp, and the light filtering through impossibly tall, ancient-looking trees was perfect. Too perfect, maybe. And as Liam guided me, his small hands moving the controllers with practiced ease through this digital Eden, I started to notice things. Little things at first. The way the leaves rustled, not just randomly, but with a specific, almost melodic pattern. The way a certain patch of moss seemed to cling to a rock with an unnerving familiarity. I chalked it up to my own tired brain, to the novelty of the experience. But then we rounded a bend, and there it was, a small, secluded clearing, and in the center, a figure. A woman sitting on a fallen log, her back to us. Her hair, a cascade of dark waves, glinted with a subtle auburn undertone, the same shade as Sarah's, my late wife, the mother of my son. A cold knot began to form in my stomach. Liam, oblivious, chirped, "See, told you it was cool. This character's supposed to be like a guide or something, a spirit of the forest." He walked me closer, and my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. The figure slowly turned. It wasn't Sarah, not exactly. The facial features were slightly blurred, as if rendered from memory, or from someone trying to recall a face they'd only seen in photographs. But the eyes, oh God, the eyes. They were Sarah's eyes. The same deep hazel, the same slight upward tilt at the outer corners, the same way they crinkled when she smiled, which she did, a slow, enigmatic smile. It was like looking into a ghost. My breath hitched. I ripped the headset off, my hands shaking. The den, with its beige walls and generic furniture, felt jarringly real, almost crude after the ethereal beauty of the Nexus. Liam looked at me, his brow furrowed. "Whoa, Dad, you okay? You went pale." I couldn't speak. I just stared at the headset, then at Liam. He was too young to understand the seismic shift that had just occurred within me. This wasn't just a game. This was something else. Something deeply unsettling. I managed to croak out, "Who made this game, Liam?" He shrugged, pulling the headset back on. "Some company, Echo Dynamics or something. Everyone's playing it. It's supposed to be the most realistic sim ever made." Echo Dynamics. The name meant nothing to me. But the woman in the game, the shadow in my wife, that meant everything. It was impossible. It had to be. A coincidence. A glitch in the matrix of this digital world. But the sinking feeling in my gut told me otherwise. The way she moved, the subtle tilt of her head as she looked at Liam's avatar, it was Sarah. Every instinct screamed it. I remembered the arguments, the late nights, the feeling that something was slipping away, piece by agonizing piece. Sarah had loved the outdoors, had always dreamed of escaping the city, of finding a quiet place, a haven. This Whispering Grove, it felt like a twisted echo of those dreams. And the way she looked at Liam, it was a look I hadn't seen in years, not since before the strain, before the distance grew between us. A look of pure, unadulterated maternal love. It was a look I had desperately missed. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp,
then immediately drowned it out with a wave of confusion. Why? Why would this game, this piece of entertainment Liam was so obsessed with, conjure up an image of my dead wife, and why did it feel so damn real? It was like a phantom limb, an ache for something that was gone, but suddenly viscerally present. I'd spent years trying to build a new life, a stable life for Liam after Sarah's accident. Her death had been sudden, brutal, a senseless car crash on a rainy highway. One moment she was laughing on the phone with her sister, the next, gone. The grief had been a physical weight, crushing me, paralyzing me. I'd barely functioned for months. Liam had been the anchor, his small, scared face the only thing that pulled me out of the abyss. We'd moved, changed schools, tried to start over. We'd built a new routine, a new normal, one that carefully excluded the sharp edges of our loss, smoothing them over with time and distance. But this game, it was ripping those edges back open, raw and bleeding. I watched Liam, his face illuminated by the faint glow of the headset, a perfect picture of innocent absorption. He had no idea. He couldn't. He was too young when it happened, too lost in his own grief to really process it. He remembered her, of course. He missed her. But this was different. This felt like a violation, or a message. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. A message from whom? Echo dynamics, or something else. I felt a primal urge to smash the headset, to shatter this digital illusion into a million pieces. But then I saw Liam smile, a genuine, unforced smile, as his avatar interacted with the virtual Sarah. It was a smile I hadn't seen on his face in what felt like forever. And in that moment, torn between revulsion and a desperate longing, I made a decision. I needed to know. I needed to understand. I needed to confront this ghost in the machine. I sat down on the floor beside Liam, the rough carpet scratching against my jeans. "Liam," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He didn't look up, still engrossed. Can you show me that part again? The clearing." He grunted, a sound of mild annoyance, but his fingers kept moving, guiding his avatar. Slowly, hesitantly, I put the headset back on. The world reformed, the whispering grove shimmering into existence. We walked back through the digital trees, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. There she was again, the woman, Sarah's shadow, my wife's ghost. This time I didn't look away. I forced myself to look, to analyze, to search for any detail that would prove it was just a figment of my imagination, a cruel trick of the light and code.
But the more I looked, the more I saw. The way she gestured with her hands, a familiar, elegant sweep that Sarah used to do when she was explaining something she was passionate about. The slight curve of her lips, a subtle imperfection that made her look so real. It wasn't just her eyes, it was her entire presence, an uncanny echo of the woman I had loved, the woman I had lost. Liam's avatar reached out, and the virtual Sarah placed a glowing orb in his hand. A quest reward, I assumed, but the gesture, it was maternal. It was Sarah. My breath hitched again. This was too much. This was not just a game, this was a direct assault on my sanity. I found myself whispering, "Sarah?" The sound was barely audible, lost in the simulated rustling of leaves. Of course, there was no response. It was a game, a program. But still, the silence that followed felt heavy, pregnant with unspoken questions. I wanted to scream, to rage, to demand answers from this digital phantom. But I couldn't. Not in front of Liam. He was watching me, his own avatar frozen mid-action, the headset tilted slightly on his head. His eyes, visible through the gap, were wide with concern. "Dad? Are you sure you're okay?" I forced a smile, a tight, unnatural thing. "Yeah, buddy, just a little overwhelmed, I guess. This game is something else." I pulled the headset off, my palms slick with sweat. The relief of escaping that suffocating digital reality was immediate, yet the unease clung to me like a second skin. The real world, with its mundane clutter and familiar smells, felt both comforting and profoundly alien. It was as if the lines between what was real and what was simulated had blurred, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. I looked at Liam, really looked at him. He was still my son, my bright, curious boy. But the image of Sarah, her ghostly presence in that virtual clearing, had injected a new, disturbing element into our lives. It was a wedge driven deep into the fragile peace we had painstakingly built.
I felt a surge of protectiveness towards him, a fierce desire to shield him from whatever dark magic was at play here. But I also felt a gnawing curiosity, a dangerous pull to explore this anomaly further. Who was behind this? Why would they create a character that so perfectly resembled Sarah? Was it a deliberate choice, a calculated move, or a chilling coincidence, a manifestation of my own unresolved grief and longing? The questions circled in my mind like vultures picking at the edges of my resolve. I needed answers, and I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I wouldn't find them by ignoring this. The next few days were a blur of forced normalcy. I went to work, I made dinner, I helped Liam with his homework, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. Every time Liam's VR headset flickered to life, a knot of dread tightened in my chest. I found myself watching him, analyzing his every move, his every word, searching for any sign that he was affected by the game's uncanny resemblance to his mother. He seemed happy, more engaged than I'd seen him in a long time. He talked about the Whispering Grove with an almost reverent awe, describing the intricate details of the landscape, the subtle interactions with the mysterious guide. He never mentioned her resemblance to Sarah, and I couldn't bring myself to ask. The thought of planting such a seed of doubt, of potentially corrupting his innocent perception of the game, felt like a betrayal, yet the silence was deafening. It was a shared secret, a dangerous unspoken truth that hung between us, a phantom limb of our past. One evening, after Liam had gone to bed, I found myself drawn back to the den. The VR headset lay on the coffee table, an innocent-looking portal to another world. My hand hovered over it, a battle raging within me. Part of me screamed to leave it alone, to let sleeping dogs lie, to protect what little peace we had left. But another, more insistent voice whispered of answers, of closure, of reclaiming control over my own fractured reality. With a sigh, I picked it up. The weight felt familiar now, less alien. I slipped it on, the soft padding settling against my temples. The world dissolved, reforming into the lush, vibrant landscape of the Nexus. I navigated the familiar path, my heart pounding a nervous tattoo against my ribs. I reached the clearing, and there she was, the woman, Sarah's shadow. This time I approached her, my avatar moving with a deliberate, almost aggressive slowness. She turned, her eyes meeting mine, and a jolt went through me, a visceral reaction that felt both terrifying and strangely comforting. It was Sarah, or a perfect, chilling imitation of her. She offered no words, just that same enigmatic smile, the one that had always held a hint of mystery. I stood there, paralyzed, the simulated breeze rustling through the digital leaves around me. What was I supposed to do? How did you confront a toast? How did you question a program? I wanted to ask her so many things. Did she know? Was she aware of this digital resurrection? Was this some cosmic joke, some cruel twist of fate? Or was it something more? A plea? A warning? My mind raced, grasping at straws, searching for an explanation, a rationalization for the impossible. I noticed a small, almost imperceptible detail then. Around her neck, partially hidden by her dark hair, was a thin, silver chain. A locket. Sarah had worn a locket, a gift from her grandmother, a small, intricately engraved piece that she never took off. My blood ran cold. This was no coincidence. This was deliberate. Someone had put this here. Someone had created this digital echo of my wife, complete with her most cherished keepsake. The implications were staggering, terrifying. Who would do this, and why? Was it a hacker, a disgruntled former employee of Echo Dynamics, or was it something more personal? Had someone known about Sarah, known about her locket, and used that knowledge to create this elaborate, disturbing illusion? My hands trembled as I reached out, my avatar's virtual fingers brushing against her simulated arm. It felt real, too real. A wave of grief, sharp and sudden, washed over me. It was like losing her all over again, but this time it was a loss tinged with anger, with confusion, with a desperate need for justice. I pulled the headset off, my chest heaving. The den felt suffocatingly small, the mundane reality a stark contrast to the profound mystery I had just encountered. I looked at the headset, then at Liam's closed bedroom door. He was asleep, oblivious to the digital ghost that haunted his game, oblivious to the unraveling reality of his father's life. But I wasn't. I couldn't be. This was no longer just about a game. It was about Sarah. It was about the truth, and I was going to find it, no matter the cost. The image of the locket, Sarah's locket, seared into my mind, fueling a growing resolve. This was too personal, too specific to be random. Someone knew us. Someone knew Sarah, and they had used her memory, her image, to create this digital haunting. I had to know who. I had to know why, and I had to make sure this never happened again. The darkness in the house, usually a comforting blanket, now felt oppressive, charged with unspoken threats. I glanced at the clock on the wall. Almost midnight. Too late to call anyone. Too late to do anything but stew in my own burgeoning fear and anger.
But sleep wouldn't come. The ghost of Sarah, the ghost in the game, had awakened something in me, a primal need to protect, to avenge, to uncover the truth. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was just the beginning. The next steps, whatever they might be, would lead me down a path I couldn't yet see, a path shrouded in the same digital fog that now obscured my own reality. The sheer audacity of it, the intimate knowledge displayed, gnawed at me. It wasn't just a character, it was Sarah, brought back to life, wearing her locket, standing in a clearing that felt like a sanctuary she had always craved. It was too perfect, too deliberate to be accidental. This was a message, a taunt, a declaration, and I was its intended recipient. I stood up, my legs feeling heavy, like lead. The silence of the house amplified the frantic beat of my heart. This wasn't the quiet grief I'd learned to live with. This was an active, aggressive haunting, and I had to fight back. The thought was a flicker of light in the oppressive darkness, a spark of defiance in the face of overwhelming bewilderment. I would not be haunted. I would investigate. I would find the source of this digital apparition, this cruel mockery of my lost love. And I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how dangerous. The allure of the game, the virtual world that had brought me face to face with my wife's ghost, was now a siren song, beckoning me further into its deceptive depths. I knew I had to resist, yet the pull was undeniable. The mystery was too great, the emotional stakes too high. I looked at the VR headset again, and this time, there was no hesitation, no fear, only a grim determination. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was no longer just a grieving father. I was a man on a mission, and the first step was to understand the game, to dissect its digital DNA, to find the architect behind this impossible resurrection. The sheer intimacy of the detail, the locket, the hair color, the specific crinkle of the eyes, spoke of someone who knew Sarah, really knew her. It wasn't a random collection of features from a database. It was personal. That realization sent a fresh wave of cold dread through me. This wasn't a game anymore. It was a deeply personal act, and I had no idea who the perpetrator was. The cliffhanger wasn't just about the game, it was about my own life, now irrevocably entangled with this digital phantom. The future stretched out, an unknown territory, and the only thing I knew for sure was that I had to keep digging. The question wasn't if I would uncover the truth, but when, and at what cost. The story was just beginning, and the tension was already unbearable. The silence of the house pressed in on me, thick and heavy, amplifying the frantic beat of my heart. It wasn't the quiet grief I'd learned to coexist with, the dull ache that had become a constant companion. This was an active, aggressive haunting, a digital wraith that had clawed its way out of the code and into my living room. And I, a man who prided himself on logic and reason, found myself utterly paralyzed, caught between a desperate need to confront this impossibility and a visceral fear of what lay beneath it. Liam was asleep, innocent in his slumber, unaware that the fantastical world he so readily embraced held a spectral echo of the mother he barely remembered. It felt like a violation, a grotesque misuse of a child's innocent joy. I wanted to protect him, to shield him from this disturbing resurrection, but how could I when I was so deeply entangled myself? The locket. That was the detail that truly shattered my fragile composure. Sarah's locket. Not just any locket, but her locket, the one her grandmother had given her, the one she'd never taken off. It was impossible for a game, even when as advanced as Nexus Echoes, to just conjure that specific, deeply personal detail. This wasn't a glitch, it was a statement. A deeply unsettling, personalized message. Who would do this? The question hammered against my skull, each iteration more frantic than the last. Was it someone from Sarah's past? Someone I'd never met? Or someone closer? Someone who knew our history, our pain, our memories?
The thought sent a fresh wave of cold dread through me. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was a deeply personal act, a deliberate resurrection designed to provoke, to disturb, to... what? To bring me back to her, to punish me for moving on. The possibilities swirled in my mind, each one more sinister than the last. I looked at the VR headset on the coffee table, its sleek, dark casing now appearing sinister, like a serpent coiled and ready to strike. It was the key to this entire bewildering puzzle, the portal that had allowed this impossible specter to manifest. I knew with a chilling certainty that I couldn't simply ignore it. To do so would be to surrender, to allow this digital phantom to dictate the terms of my reality, to continue its insidious invasion of my life and Liam's. The next morning, the world outside my window seemed unchanged, the sun rising over the familiar suburban landscape as if nothing had been fundamentally altered. But I knew better. The ground beneath my feet felt unstable, the solid reality I'd clung to for years now riddled with unseen fissures. I made Liam breakfast, the mundane act of pouring cereal feeling almost surreal, a desperate attempt to anchor myself in the familiar. He was his usual cheerful self, chattering about school, about a friend's new bike, his innocence a stark contrast to the turmoil churning within me. I watched him, my heart aching. He was so young, so unaware of the dark currents that were beginning to swirl around us. I wanted to ask him, to press him about the game, about this virtual woman, about the locket. But the words caught in my throat. How could I even begin to explain? How could I articulate the profound wrongness of it all without terrifying him, without planting seeds of doubt and fear where only wonder should exist? "Dad, you okay?" Liam asked, tilting his head, his eyes, so much like Sarah's, narrowed in concern. I forced a smile. "Just thinking, buddy. Big day at work tomorrow." It was a flimsy excuse, but he seemed to accept it, returning to his cereal with a satisfied nod. Later that day, I found myself drawn to my home office, a space I usually avoided, a shrine to the life I'd once shared with Sarah. Her favorite mug, chipped and faded, still sat on a shelf. A framed photograph of us, younger, happier, before the shadows had begun to creep in, sat on my desk. I traced the outline of her face with my finger, the smooth surface of the glass doing nothing to assuage the raw ache in my chest. This was the woman whose ghost was now haunting my son's video game. This was the woman whose memory had been so cruelly and precisely resurrected. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. It wasn't just an AI designed to mimic a person. It was a meticulous reconstruction, a digital avatar imbued with specific, intimate knowledge. I needed information, not just about the game, but about Echo Dynamics, the company behind it. I opened my laptop, the familiar hum of the machine a small comfort. A few quick searches revealed very little. Echo Dynamics was a relatively new player in the VR market, known for its groundbreaking realism and immersive experiences.
Their flagship game, Nexus Echoes, had garnered significant critical acclaim, praised for its breathtaking graphics and innovative gameplay. But there was a frustrating lack of detail about their origins, their founders, their philosophy. It was as if they had appeared out of nowhere, a ghost in the corporate machine. As I delved deeper, scrolling through forums and industry news, I stumbled upon a small, almost overlooked article from a tech blog about Echo Dynamics' early development phase. It mentioned a beta testing program that had been kept highly confidential, involving a select group of users who provided feedback on early builds of Nexus Echoes. The article speculated that this closed-door testing had been instrumental in refining the game's hyper-realistic elements. Beta testing, that sounded promising. If I could find someone who had participated in that program, perhaps they could shed some light on how this Sarah avatar had come to be. I started searching for mentions of beta testers, sifting through dozens of forum posts and social media mentions. Most were filled with generic praise for the game's quality. But then, buried deep in a thread are graphical glitches. I found it. A user under the handle ObserverX made a cryptic comment. The realism is uncanny, especially with the character modeling, almost like they're pulling from real people's memories. My heart leaped. Could this be it? Could ObserverX be a beta tester who had encountered something similar? I clicked on their profile. It was sparse, minimal activity, but there was one other comment, a direct reply to a question about the game's development. The team at Echo Dynamics is incredibly dedicated. They're obsessed with authenticity. They say they want players to feel like they're reliving their most cherished moments. Cherished moments. The phrase echoed in my mind, chilling me to the bone. Was Sarah's memory considered a cherished moment by someone at Echo Dynamics? I sent a direct message to Observer X, my fingers trembling as I typed. Hi, I saw your comment about Echo Dynamics and character modeling. I'm particularly interested in the authenticity aspect. My son plays Nexus Echoes, and, well, there's a character in the game that seems uncannily familiar. I'm trying to understand how they achieve such realism. Any insight you might have would be greatly appreciated. I hit send, the message disappearing into the digital ether, leaving me with a knot of anxious anticipation. Days turned into a week. The tension in the house was palpable, at least for me. Liam continued to play Nexus Echoes, his enthusiasm undimmed. He seemed to have no idea that his father was conducting a clandestine investigation into the digital ghost of his mother. I received no response from Observer X, and the frustration gnawed at me. The article about the beta program felt like a dead end, the cryptic comments offering tantalizing hints but no concrete answers. I was running out of leads, the sense of helplessness growing with each passing hour. Then, one afternoon, as I was about to give hope, a notification pinged on my laptop. A new message from Observer X. My breath hitched. The message was short, concise, and filled with an electrifying urgency. You're not the only one who's noticed. The spirit of the forest character, it's too specific. I've been trying to find out who designed her. I suspected someone with a personal connection, someone who knew her. My mind raced. Knew her, knew Sarah. Who could possibly have known her well enough to recreate her, down to the smallest detail, and embed her in a virtual world? Observer X continued, the message flowing rapidly. There was a designer, I think, who left the team abruptly before the public release. His name was Mark Jenkins. He was reportedly very close to the project's lead. Rumor has it he was the one who handled the advanced character modeling, and he was obsessed with Sarah. That's what people said. Mark Jenkins. The name resonated with a faint, almost imperceptible hum of Eenies. I didn't recognize it, but the accusation, the obsession, it was a tangible thread, something concrete to grasp. Obsessed with Sarah, I typed back, my voice a low whisper in the empty office. How? Why? The reply was almost immediate. He met her once, years ago, at a tech conference. He talked about her constantly, said she was his muse. When she died, he was devastated. He disappeared for a while. When he resurfaced, he was working for Echo Dynamics. Some people thought he was using the game to bring her back. This was it, the missing piece, the motive, the connection. A man obsessed with Sarah, grieving her loss, had used his skills as a game designer to create her digital likeness. It was twisted, perverse, and deeply disturbing, but it explained the locket, the eyes, the familiar gestures. It was a monument to his obsession, a cruel manifestation of his warped reality. But why now? Why was Liam encountering her? Had Mark Jenkins deliberately placed her in the game, waiting for the right moment or the right player to discover her? Or was it a side effect of his obsessive design? Sarah's likeness imprinted so deeply onto the code that she manifested in unexpected ways. I had to find Mark Jenkins. He was the key to unlocking this entire nightmare. Do you know how I can contact him? I typed, my hands shaking with a mixture of fear and a desperate, burning resolve. Observer X's response was hesitant. He's difficult to find. He's gone off the grid, essentially. But there was one last place I heard he might be. A small cabin up in the Adirondacks, an old family property. I don't have an address, just a general area, somewhere near Lake Placid. The Adirondacks, Lake Placid. It was a long shot, a remote possibility, but it was the only lead I had. I knew what I had to do. I had to go there. I had to confront Mark Jenkins. I had to demand answers. The thought of driving for hours, of venturing into the wilderness based on a rumor, was daunting. But the image of Sarah's digital ghost, her eyes filled with that uncanny maternal warmth, the locket resting against her neck, propelled me forward. This was no longer just about uncovering a corporate secret. It was about reclaiming my wife's memory, about protecting my son from a twisted obsession, and about finding a semblance of truth in the heart of this digital deception. I spent the rest of the evening researching cabins near Lake Placid, looking for any old listings, any hints of a secluded property owned by a family named Jenkins. It was a needle in a haystack, but the urgency had replaced my usual caution. I packed a small bag, a few essentials, and a heavy dose of trepidation. As I stood by the door, ready to leave, I paused, looking back at the den. The VR headset sat innocently on the coffee table, a silent testament to the impossible reality it had unveiled.
A surge of anger, hot and visceral, washed over me. This had to stop. This obsession, this digital haunting, it was a poison, and I was determined to find the antidote, even if it meant venturing into the darkest corners of a stranger's disturbed mind. The drive itself was long, the highways stretching out before me, each mile carrying me further away from the comfortable familiarity of my life and closer to an unknown, unsettling confrontation.
The landscape gradually shifted, the manicured lawns and suburban sprawl giving way to rolling hills and dense forests. The air grew crisper, carrying the scent of thyme and damp earth. It was beautiful, in a stark, wild way. But beneath the surface beauty, a sense of foreboding settled in my gut. I reached the vicinity of Lake Placid late the next afternoon. The town itself was charming, bustling with tourists, a stark contrast to the isolation I was seeking. My research had yielded a potential lead, an old, rarely used property that had belonged to a distant relative of the Jenkins family, situated a few miles outside of town, deep in the woods. It was more of a hunch than concrete information, but it was all I had. Following a winding, poorly maintained dirt road, I finally arrived at a small, weathered cabin, nestled amongst towering pines. It looked abandoned, forgotten, a relic of a bygone era. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, a single thin strand against the vast expanse of the sky. My heart pounded. Someone was here. I parked my car a little distance away, not wanting to draw immediate attention. The silence here was profound, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. It was the kind of silence that could either be peaceful or deeply unnerving. Today, it felt unnerving. I approached the cabin cautiously, my senses on high alert. The front door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, calling out, "Hello, is anyone here?" No answer. The interior was dim, sparsely furnished. A thick layer of dust coated everything, suggesting long-term disuse. But then my eyes fell on a desk in the corner. It was clean, meticulously organized, a stark contrast to the rest of the cabin. On it sat a high-end computer monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse. And beside them, a single worn photograph. A photograph of Sarah, smiling, happy. My blood ran cold. This was his sanctuary, his shrine. As I stepped closer to the desk, my foot dislodged a loose floorboard. I looked down, my curiosity piqued. Beneath the floorboard was a small, hidden compartment, and inside that compartment, I found it. A small, velvet box. My hands trembled as I opened it. Nestled within, on a bed of faded satin, lay a delicate silver chain, and attached to it, a small, intricately engraved locket. Sarah's locket. A figure emerged from the shadows at the back of the cabin. Tall, gaunt, with haunted eyes that burned with an unsettling intensity. He was a man I'd never seen before, yet in his eyes I saw a reflection of the obsession that had driven him. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice raspy, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. It was Mark Jenkins. I met his gaze, my own burning with a mixture of rage and despair. "You put her in the game," I stated, my voice tight with emotion. "You brought her back." He flinched, not at the accusation, but at the word back. "She was never truly gone," he whispered, his eyes fixed on the locket in my hand. "I just helped her remember how to be seen." "Seen?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You created a ghost, a cruel mockery of my wife." "Mockery?" He took a step closer, his gaze intensifying. "She was more real to me than anyone. I met her once, and she changed everything. She was light. She was everything good. And when she was taken, it was a crime against the universe. I had to preserve her. I had to ensure she wasn't forgotten. Not by me, not by the world." "And my son?" I demanded, the thought of Liam's innocent interaction with this digital phantom igniting a fresh wave of fury. "Did you think of him when you trapped his mother in your twisted fantasy?" A flicker of something, pain, guilt, crossed his face, but it was quickly masked by his unshakable conviction. He needed to remember her too, to know her, to feel her presence. I gave him that. I gave him back a piece of his mother. "You gave him a lie," I spat, the words raw and ragged. "You twisted
twisted her memory, Mark. You made her into something she wasn't. You made her into your obsession. He took another step, his hand reaching out, not towards me, but towards the locket. It's not a lie if it feels true. She's there, in the nexus. She's real to him, she's real to me, and she's real because I made her real. The sheer audacity of his words, the complete disconnect from reality, was staggering. He truly believed this. He had convinced himself that his digital creation was a form of resurrection. "You're sick," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Help," he let out a chilling laugh. "I have her. That's all the help I need. And now you found her too. You found the proof. She's not gone. Not as long as I can remember her. As long as she lives in the code." He gestured vaguely towards a corner of the cabin where another, more powerful-looking VR rig was set up, wires snaking across the floor. "She's waiting. She's always waiting." My mind reeled. He wasn't just creating her, he was living with her, interacting with her, immersed in his own manufactured reality. The implications were terrifying. He had the power to manipulate this digital world, to embed memories, to bring ghosts to life, and he had done it with Sarah, with my Sarah. "You can't do this," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "You can't keep her like this. She deserves to rest." He shook his head, his eyes glazing over, lost in the digital world he had created. "Rest? She's not resting. She's living, in a place where she's loved, where she's remembered, where she's perfect. Unlike how it was for you." The words struck me like a physical blow. He knew about Sarah and me, about the cracks that had appeared in our marriage, about the distance that had grown between us before her death. How could he possibly know that? Had he been watching us, stalking us? The paranoia that had been simmering beneath the surface now threatened to consume me. "How do you know that?" I demanded, my voice barely a whisper. He smiled, a slow, unsettling smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I know a lot of things. I know about her dreams. I know about her fears. I know about the things she never told you." He stepped towards the VR rig, his hand hovering over the headset. "And I know how to bring her back exactly as she was. Or, perhaps, even better." My gaze snapped to the VR rig. A terrifying realization dawned on me. He wasn't just creating Sarah's avatar. He was using her likeness, her essence, to fuel something more. Something that could influence Liam, that could reshape his memories, that could bring Sarah back into our lives in a way I could never have imagined. The power he wielded, the control he exerted over this digital realm was immense and terrifying, and he was clearly not afraid to use it. The cabin, once just a remote dwelling, now felt like a cage, a prison of code and obsession. I had come seeking answers, but I had stumbled into a warped reality, a dangerous game where the lines between life and death, memory and illusion, had been irrevocably blurred. And as Mark Jenkins's eyes gleamed with a disturbing intensity, I knew I was in deeper than I could have ever anticipated. The fight for Sarah's memory, for Liam's reality, had just begun, and I had no idea if I could win. The air in the cabin was thick with the scent of old wood, and something else, something metallic and sterile that I couldn't quite place.
It clung to the back of my throat, a phantom taste that mirrored the unease curdling in my stomach. Mark's gaze, when it returned to me, was sharp, calculating. He was like a predator who had finally cornered his prey, not with brute force, but with the insidious allure of a meticulously crafted trap. He saw my confusion, my dawning horror, and it fueled him. "She loved this place," he said, his voice a low murmur, weaving through the suffocating silence. "She told me once about a cabin she imagined, a place where she could just be, away from all of it, the noise, the expectations, the disappointments." The last word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusation. He knew. He'd somehow tapped into the very marrow of our struggles, the private fractures that Sarah had carried, the ones I hadn't been strong enough to mend. Disappointments? I finally managed to choke out, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "What are you talking about?" He laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "You think I haven't seen it? The strain? The distance? The way her eyes would glaze over when you talked about work, about the future. She was fading, even before she was taken. Fading into a ghost in her own life. I just gave her a new one." He gestured to the pristine desk, to the photograph of Sarah. "This is her, of course, the real Sarah. But the Sarah in the Nexus, she's the one who never had to compromise, the one who always got what she wanted, the one who was truly seen." The sheer, unadulterated narcissism of it all was breathtaking. He had taken my wife, my Liam's mother, and twisted her essence into a vessel for his own warped desires. He wasn't preserving her, he was recreating her, sculpting her into an idealized version that existed only in his mind and within the confines of his digital playground. And he was using Liam's innocent engagement with the game as a tool, a Trojan horse to further his own delusion. "You're not giving Liam anything," I said, my voice gaining a hard edge, fueled by a protective rage. "You're stealing from him. You're stealing his memories of his real mother and replacing them with a puppet." He recoiled slightly, his eyes narrowing. "A puppet. She is more alive than most people you'd meet on the street. She responds. She feels. She remembers." He walked over to the main VR rig, his movements fluid, almost reverent. "And I can show you. I can let you see for yourself. See the woman you lost, or rather, the woman I saved." He picked up the sleek black VR headset, the same model I had in my living room, the one that had brought this nightmare into my home. My stomach clenched. He wanted me to step into his world. He wanted to show me the Sarah he had conjured. It was a trap, I knew it, a perverse invitation to witness the full extent of his delusion. But a part of me, the part that was still grieving, still searching for answers, still desperate for a connection to the woman I'd loved, was drawn to it. I had to see. I had to understand the depth of this madness. "And what if I refuse?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He smiled again, that chilling, knowing smile. "You won't. You can't. You want her back, don't you? You want to see her smile again. You want to hear her laugh. I can give you that. I can give you both that, for a little while at least, until you understand." He held out the headset. My hand trembled as I reached for it. It felt cold, inert, yet I knew the power it held, the gateway it represented. I put it on, the padded fabric cool against my skin. The world around me dissolved, replaced by a sudden, overwhelming darkness. Then, slowly, impossibly, light bloomed. It was a forest. Not just any forest, but our forest. The one we used to hike in, the one with the ancient oak trees, the whispering pines, the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy. I could smell the pine needles, feel the soft give of the earth beneath my feet, hear the distant, familiar melody of a babbling brook. It was so real, so visceral, it took my breath away. And then, I saw her. She was standing by the brook, her back to me, her hair the same rich auburn I remembered, catching the sunlight. She was wearing a simple sundress, the kind she loved. I couldn't see her face, but the way she held herself, the slight tilt of her head, it was unmistakably Sarah. My heart hammered against my ribs, a desperate drumbeat of hope and dread. "Sarah," I whispered, the name catching in my throat, raw with emotion. She turned, and it was her. It was her. Her eyes, those beautiful, intelligent green eyes, looked at me, but they held a depth, a serenity that I hadn't seen in them for a long time. A sadness had been etched there, a weariness that had slowly consumed her. But here, she was radiant, free. "Oh, hello," she said, her voice the melody I'd longed to hear again. It was warm, familiar, full of a gentle curiosity. But it wasn't quite right. There was a subtle lilt, a cadence that felt learned. "It's me," I managed, taking a step forward. It's
It's Daniel. She tilted her head, a hint of confusion clouding her features. Daniel, I don't think I know a Daniel. The hope in my chest withered and died, replaced by a chilling realization. This wasn't Sarah, not truly. This was a perfect imitation, a puppet master's creation, programmed to believe she had never known me. The locket, it was there, glinting against her collarbone, exactly as it had been in life. The detail was so perfect, so agonizingly real. You don't remember me, I stammered, my voice thick with unshed tears. Sarah, it's me, your husband. She smiled, a serene, disarming smile. Husband? I don't have a husband. I'm just here, in the forest. It's beautiful, isn't it? She gestured around them, her eyes wide with an innocent wonder. A wave of cold anger washed over me. This was his masterpiece. He had taken Sarah's image, her likeness, and erased me from her memory. He had created a version of her that existed solely for him, in a world he controlled. This isn't real, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. This is a program. He made you. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes held a hint of something else, a flicker of confusion, perhaps even fear. Made me? What do you mean? I'm here. I'm real. Suddenly, I heard a voice behind her, a voice that was not Sarah's. It was Mark's. She's as real as you want her to be, Daniel, and in this reality, she's happy, she's safe, she's finally free from all the complicated things. I spun around, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Mark was standing a few feet away, dressed in the same clothes he'd been wearing in the cabin, his eyes alight with a disturbing pride. He was watching us, a voyeur in his own twisted drama. You can't do this, I said, my voice raw. You can't rewrite her. You can't erase me. He chuckled, a soft, dismissive sound. I'm not rewriting her. I'm perfecting her, giving her the life she deserved. A life without pain, without disappointment, without you. The words hit me like a physical blow. He wanted me gone. He wanted Sarah to exist in the world where I had never been, and he was using Liam, using his innocent interaction with the game, to cement this delusion. Liam, I said, the name a desperate plea. He's my son. He remembers his mother. Your Sarah is a lie to him. Mark's expression darkened. Liam needs to remember her as she was meant to be.
Pure, unburdened. This is for his own good. He turned back to Sarah, his voice softening. Isn't it, my dear? Isn't it better this way? Sarah looked at him, her expression serene, almost vacant. Better? She echoed. Yes, it is better here. It's so peaceful. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. The woman I loved, or at least her digital echo, was being manipulated, reprogrammed, her very essence twisted to suit the delusions of a broken man, and I was powerless to stop it. This is insane, Mark, I choked out, my voice cracking. You're destroying everything. You're destroying her memory. He stepped closer to me, his gaze intense. I am preserving it. I am giving it immortality. You couldn't do it, Daniel. You let her fade. You let her get lost. I found her. I saved her. And I won't let you take her away from me again. He reached out, his hand hovering near Sarah's arm. She leaned into his touch, a contented sigh escaping her lips. It was a scene of perverse intimacy, a betrayal of everything I held dear. She's not yours, I said, my voice a low growl. She was my wife. She's Liam's mother. Mark's eyes flashed with anger. And now she's mine. Mine to cherish, mine to protect, mine to love. A love that never ends, never fades, never disappoints. He glanced at the headset I was still wearing. You can stay, you know. You can watch. You can see the woman you lost, living a perfect life. But you can't have her. Not anymore. The offer was a grotesque mockery, a final, twisted twist of the knife. To stay and watch my wife, or her digital ghost, live a perfect life with another man. The thought was unbearable. I ripped the headset off, the familiar, dusty interior of the cabin rushing back into focus. The contrast was jarring, the raw, unvarnished reality of the place a brutal balm against the artificial perfection I had just witnessed. Mark was still standing by the VR rig, a look of smug satisfaction on his face. He had shown me his world, and in doing so, he had confirmed my worst fears. He was lost, utterly and irrevocably lost, trapped in a digital labyrinth of his own making. "You're sick," I said, my voice calm, devoid of the rage that had consumed me moments before. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the weary resignation of someone who had seen the abyss. He didn't flinch. "Perhaps. But I have her. And you? You have nothing." He was wrong. I had Liam, and Liam had his real memories of his mother, memories that were precious and untainted by Mark's obsession. I had a responsibility. I had to get Liam away from this. I had to protect him from Mark's influence, from the dangerous allure of this fabricated reality. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice firm, "and you will never, ever get near my son again." He laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You can't stop me, Daniel. The Nexus is everywhere. And Sarah, she's always waiting." I didn't reply. I didn't waste another word on him. I turned and walked out of the cabin, the crisp Adirondack air a welcome shock against my skin. I got into my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys. As I drove away, I glanced back at the small, weathered cabin nestled amongst the pines. Smoke still curled from the chimney, a thin, ethereal thread against the vast sky. It was a monument to obsession, a prison of code, and a stark reminder of how easily the lines between reality and illusion could be blurred. The drive back was a blur. The image of Sarah's serene, unfamiliar face, her eyes holding a manufactured happiness, was burned into my mind. The pain of her loss was still immense, a gaping wound that would never truly heal. But now it was mingled with a new kind of grief, a grief for the perversion of her memory, for the stolen innocence of my son, and for the chilling realization of how far a broken mind could descend into madness. When I finally pulled into my driveway, the familiar facade of my house felt alien, tainted by the knowledge of what lay hidden within its digital veins. I walked inside, the silence of the house no longer oppressive, but our fragile sanctuary. Liam was in his room, probably engrossed in his video games, blissfully unaware of the dark forces that had been at play. I went to his door, my heart aching. I opened it and found him sitting on the floor, the VR headset lying discarded beside him. He looked up, his eyes bright and innocent. "Dad, you're back!" I walked over to him, sinking down beside him on the floor. I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight. He was real, solid, warm. My son. And in that moment, amidst the wreckage of my life, I knew what I had to do. I had to shield him. I had to guide him back to the truth, to the memories of his real mother, the Sarah I had loved and lost, the Sarah who deserved to rest in peace, unburdened by the twisted desires of a stranger. The fight was far from over. The Nexus was out there, its tendrils reaching into the heart of our lives. But I had faced the darkness, and I had survived, and I would do everything in my power to ensure that Liam did too. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room, a quiet end to a tumultuous day, and a somber beginning to whatever came next.